If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Welcome to my channel where we cover the lore of video games. We cover all kinds from the mainstream to the indie, so I hope you enjoy your stay, and welcome to the Chronicler of Lore. Before we get started with today's video, I have an announcement to make. After years of telling other people's stories, I finally released one of my own. My novel Eternal Reign is available now in both ebook and paperback format for those of you who are like me and prefer to collect physical media. You can grab a copy right now on Amazon through the link in the description of this video. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. After taking care of the blasphemies that popped up all around Eorzea, the Warrior of Light learns that she's not the only one who's been hunting the things down. Gaius and the Alamegans took down a few in Werlet, and he helped the Bajna resistance handle a few of their own, so you haven't been the only person dealing with the things. But there have been some reports from Garlemald that a blasphemy popped up there, and they need your help. Oddly enough, there hadn't really been any blasphemies in Garlemald before, probably because the place was too cold and monster-ridden already for anyone to notice. But the Garleans who have been trying to rebuild their fallen nation have started turning, and that's a problem that they need you for, especially since they claim that this blasphemy is stronger than most of the others. The strangest thing is the request for aid came from Sharlayan. Considering how they hated intervening in the problems of other nations, them worrying about Garlemald is highly out of character, so you make your way to the Frozen Nation to find out what's going on. Maxima and Lucia are happy to see that you answered the call, but they figured that the best person to tell you about the blasphemy is the one who found it, and that person turns out to be Fortuno, Alphino and Alisae's dad. The Forum and the Loporrits had been trying to find a better use for the moon since the whole evacuate the planet plan has gone out of the window. They've decided to turn the place into a storehouse for all of humanity's knowledge. Think Labyrinthos but on steroids. It's a good idea since Aetheris is hit with a world-ending calamity every Thursday. So if the world ends, the knowledge that people have gathered won't be lost. The moon's also not under the laws of any particular nation, so members from all of the world's nations will have access to it no matter how the individual places see one another. Fortuno had already gotten the Eorzeans, the people from the Far East, and people from Razat Han to join a team to survey the moon and see if it will work as a knowledge repository. But their plan was put on hold because the blasphemy appeared in the Tower of Babel. After that happened, there started to be claims of Garleans transforming, which made things worse. The Ilzabard contingents already sent out troops to deal with the creatures, and Artuarel has started trying to find out more about the creature that started the changes. The twins are helping keep the people at Tertium from panicking until this new threat has been dealt with. Unfortunately, it won't be all that easy to get to the main blasphemy. Ugiri and Fordola are working on solving that problem, and Lucia thinks it'll be best if you found out what the problem is from them, and Fortuno decides to tag along. Fordola's not in the least bit surprised to see you show up to save the day once again, but Ugiri is. Granted, at least she's happy you're there. Fordola's never happy about anything. Ugiri knows why you're there, so she figures it'll be best if one of her scouts gets you up to speed. This particular scout turns out to be Lawrence, the former leader of the Company of Heroes, although he pretends to not know who you are for whatever reason. According to him, the blasphemy is holed up in the top of the Tower of Babel, but it's got a small army around it, and there's some type of magical barrier keeping things from reaching the creatures. Lawrence doesn't know much about magic, but he does know that if you don't get a spellcaster, none of you will be getting close to the tower. That's strange because blasphemies can't use ether, so how this barrier is being maintained is a complete mystery, one that Lawrence plans on getting the Elder Seedseer to help solve once she gets there. While you wait for her, Lawrence thinks you all need to find a way to stop people from changing. Artuarel is working on that, so you and Fortuno go to talk to him. None of the people who've turned have been in Camp Broken Glass or Tertium, and he's pretty sure that all of the people who have turned came from Corvos. When the final days hit, the people of Corvos came to Garlemald for safety, but the capital was already in bad shape. Some of them stayed, but the rest decided to try to find safe haven outside of the city. Artuarel wants to go and talk to them to find out what caused the changes, and he wants you and Fortuno to tag along. The people had loved the land of Corvos until the final days had forced them out. That had been hard to deal with, but coming home and seeing the destruction and death in the capital made the people feel like everything they had was gone, and losing 2 homes back to back is enough to break anyone. proving that that's the case, someone turns while you're there. The new creature doesn't attack anyone, it just heads off toward the Tower of Babel, so you hunt it down and deal with it. Once you put it down, the people who saw the man turn claims it happened after the guy started listening to the radio. The thing keeps playing the same message, talking about the Empire is gone and it will never rise again. The creepy part is there are no stations around that should have been able to broadcast a radio signal. Now, Anima had the ability to send out messages, but that monstrosity has been dead for a long time, which presents more questions than it answers. Artuarel shows up, and he's been joined by both Merwim and Emmerich. They had heard about the blasphemy and they figured they should join in to help deal with it. So Fortuno lets them know what you found out and shows them the radio that's still repeating the same message. None of them have a clue who sent it until the thing says one line that Connie Senna's guard recognizes: "For glory everlasting, for Garlemald." That was a saying that Lord Nerva always said, and anyone who lived under his rule would have heard him say it constantly. He's also the one who had tried to take over Garlemald after Varys died, but he disappeared after the Civil War started. How he snuck into the Tower of Babel without getting killed is beyond them, but the answer is simple: Nerva is the blasphemy. Fortuno thinks that he turned after he watched the Empire crumble, which took his dreams of ruling it with it. It makes sense, but the question is how to stop others from sharing the same fate. It won't be as simple as finding the Garleans a new home because it's unlikely that they'll leave. That means the only thing anyone can do is try to help them rebuild. It won't be easy, but there are some members of Garlemald's former ruling class mixed in with the refugees in Camp Broken Glass, so getting them to help work on the blueprint for Garlemald's new government is a start, so you all go to talk to them. The people don't really think rebuilding Garlemald is possible since it got pretty messed up during the final days, but Fortuno isn't telling them to do it alone. He plans on having aid sent over from Charlian, and if that's not enough, he's willing to offer the Garlean sanctuary and complete citizenship in the nation. Considering how hard it is to even visit the place, his offer is extremely surprising. It seems odd that he's offering so much, but he's making up for something he feels that his people had done wrong. When they had been planning on evacuating the world during the final days, they had decided to not tell the Garleans. In other words, they were going to let every last Garlean die if the final days hadn't been stopped. Regardless of what the Garlean leadership had done, the citizens were innocent, and no amount of justification could make leaving them all to die the right thing to do. But since the Scions stopped the final days, that gives them a chance to make up for that. And while some of the Garleans don't like the idea, more than a handful of them are okay with it since they don't really have many options. That's a step in the right direction, so Emmerich and the others go to talk to Maxima to figure out how to move forward, while you and Fortuno get back to work on figuring out how to break through the blasphemy's barrier and get into the Tower of Babel to put it down. Since the problem of new Garleans turning into monsters has been dealt with to the best of his abilities, Fortuno is ready to focus on breaking through the blasphemy's barrier. Since blasphemies tend to act kind of like they did when they were regular people, he figures it'll be a good idea to find out more about who Nerva was. Fortunately, there are some prisoners from the 3rd Legion at Camp Broken Glass who've been freed from tempering and are ready to be questioned, so the Warrior of Light and Fortuno head over there to do just that. One of the prisoners is Vergalia, the woman who served directly under Nerva, and she's the perfect person to talk to. At first, she's not all that excited about talking to any of you, but after Fortuno explains the whole situation with Nerva, she's willing to talk even though she doesn't think she can help all that much. The last time she had seen him was right after the Civil War had started. Nerva had spent most of the day listening to the radio and waiting for news that would let him know that his side had started to win. The next day, Vergalia left for the front line, which was when the noise that tempered them all had come from the Tower of Babel. She doesn't remember much after that, but she had heard that the radios had kept the people near them from getting tempered, so Nerva would probably have never been taken over. That would actually have been a bad thing for him, since he was so devoted to Garlemald. Being aware and having to watch the nation fall definitely would have made him turn into a blasphemy. Since the Tower of Babel was built right on top of the throne that Nerva wanted so much, it makes sense that his blasphemy form would set up his base there. While she's giving you all of that information, Connie Senna finally shows up, and she's pretty positive that the barrier blocking your way into the tower is made up of ether, despite the fact that blasphemies don't have ether. She can feel the ether flowing from the land to the tower, which is what the tower was made to do, so whether the blasphemy can use ether or not is irrelevant. Even though she's pretty sure about what she's sensing, she wants to get a closer look, and she wants you to come with her just in case stuff tries to eat her. The fact that she has Fordola, Lawrence, and Ugiri with her means her chance of dying is already 0. But she wants a full raid party, so you agree to tag along. Vergalia wants to come too. She's still way too hurt to fight, but she knows the land better than any of you, which is more helpful than you might think, So once it's all been cleared with a guard, you all head off to the area where Connie sensed the largest deposit of ether. Connie was obviously right, but since all of the other towers that the Telophoroi made to steal the planet's ether were wiped out, the ether drain should have stopped. She doesn't know why it hasn't, but before she can think too long about that, Lauren senses somebody watching you all. Yugiri and Fordola head off to kill your stalker, but it turns out to be Nero. As usual, he's clearly plotting something, and if he's following you around, it's probably because his plan didn't exactly work out. Lawrence figures that the man had been trying to get to the moon, but he couldn't get through the barrier either. That's true, and since Nero knows that the Warrior of Light usually finds ways to overcome obstacles, he figured that she would eventually find a way through the barrier, so he's been following her. He also wants to see if your little group is smart enough to figure out a way through before he does. What he really means is he doesn't want to fight the blasphemy on his own because he's fond of living. While he was in the tower, he did learn that one of the ether-draining spires didn't disappear when Anima died. What's worse is when they collected the creature's body parts, they missed one. That means that if someone has a piece of Anima and the Tower of Babel, they can draw ether from the area, which is how the nerve of blasphemy is making his barrier. That's worse than it seems, because if he draws too much ether from the area, Garlemald will be totally wiped out. So you all need to deal with the thing fast, since what Nerva has done has made the tower unstable. It'll explode soon according to Nero, and that will destroy all of the ether in the area and make getting to the moon impossible, which is more important to him than saving his homeland. The only way to break the barrier is to find the missing piece of Anima, which is ironically its heart, and there's no telling where Nerva might have hid it. Vergalia actually thinks she knows where it might be. While she was tempered, they were ordered to build a facility in an out-of-the-way spot. She doesn't know what it was for, but since it was under Anima's orders, it's a good place to start looking. The place is probably heavily guarded, so Lawrence thinks that a smaller group will have a better chance of getting inside and looking around. So while him, Fordola, and Yugiri go to hopefully shut down the barrier, the rest of you get ready to attack the tower. In the midst of all of that, another minor problem pops up, because of course it does. Some Garleans have left the camp and are headed to the Tower of Babel. They heard that Nerva was there, but they didn't hear the part about him being a monster. They're walking toward their death, so you go to get them before they get killed. You find them before they get murdered and explain that Nerva is building an army in the Tower of Babel, but it's an army of monsters. Hearing that makes them just a tad less excited about going, but it also takes away their last hope of going back to the way things used to be. Fortuno lets them know that him and his people plan on helping rebuild the nation, but they don't seem to really see that happening any more than the other Garleans had. But they do find his idea of joining the expedition to the moon to be a good one, after Nero tells them to grow a pair and stop whining. Most people only need a good kick in the backside to make them do what they should be doing anyway, and Nero's always happy to be the one doing the kicking. But even though they're willing, they can't go to the moon until the blasphemy is gone, so now that the little side mission is done, you head to meet up with your reinforcements and get ready to do battle. The last two members of your extremely overpowered squad turns out to be Hien and Rauban. They get there right before the call comes saying that Lawrence and his squad have found Anima's heart, because of course it'd be in the first place that they looked, and now the barrier is gone, so your raid party filled with main characters who you've never seen fight together head into the tower to take on Nerva and his army. No matter how cool it is to have the leaders of all of the major nations fighting with you, there's a very practical reason why stuff like this should never happen. If the mission goes bad and the tower explodes, or a random arrow kills practically anyone in your party, entire nations will be thrown out of whack. In fact, if Merlwyb dies, Limsa Lamensa would end up in worse shape than Garlemald, since she's pretty much the only thing keeping the nation from going back to its pirate roots. And considering how many blasphemies Nerva has serving him, death was a very real possibility. And that says nothing about the transformed Garlean himself. The people said he was the strongest blasphemy, something they had no way of knowing before this fight, but they weren't wrong. It took a lot of work to bring it down, but your very overpowered squad gets the job done. With the monster destroyed and the tower cleared, it opens up the way for the Sharlians to carry out their plan of making a united coalition and using the moon to store the world's knowledge. And to prove that people actually can live there, Livingway shows up, which thoroughly creeps out the Garleans, but proves that Fortuno's plan isn't all that crazy. So the formerly reluctant Garleans get ready to head off and start a new venture in a brand new world, with Nero chasing after them. This concludes the story of Endwalker's role quest. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, share it, and subscribe. Donate to the channel if you can, and I'll see you all next time.